Malevolent is unlike anything I've ever seen before. A show made by one man every week, averaging about 10 minutes of fully produced content, with an element of surprise for even himself. There are patrons who vote on what happens next, and he has to prepare for all outcomes. My name is Queen. This is a podcast all about Malevolent, where once a week, every week, I'll talk about that element of surprise with other fans, all participating in the coolest storytelling podcast of our time. Welcome to Malevolent Autopsy. To weigh the pros and cons of this vote, we talk a lot in the official Invictus Discord on a dedicated channel called Poll Chat. Let's go talk to the other patrons on our live stage show to uncover the pros and cons for this week's chapter and have a discussion about the merits of voting. So after deciding to listen to John and hide and wait, Arthur spirals into despair. He decides before he dies he wants to read the letter from what's-his-name. John recites the Invictus poem as the contents of the letter have been long since washed away, and it gives Arthur the strength to go on. By luring the creature that stalks them, they manage to retrieve the bag and flee, readying to shoot. But does John remember where to aim? So, Go-Goat said the voice acting in this chapter was phenomenal, and yes, I do have to agree. The voice acting in Malevolent just gets better and better, but I have always said, for me, personally, whenever I want to compliment the voice acting in Malevolent, I always end up saying the acting, because truly it's not even just the particular accent or the performance. It's like something deeper than that. It's the presentation of genuine emotion that Harlan gives every single time to every character. I cannot wrap my mind around how he does it. It is so real and so terrifyingly honest that sometimes I'm like, dude, are you okay? Like sometimes I'm like, I hope that Harlan himself has not ever been trapped underneath a spooky castle surrounded by trees feeling like he's gonna die. You know what I mean? Like, the way that he acts is so impactful and real that I feel like it's happening right in front of me. So, I mean, I don't know that's the point, but Mizra said, it reminds me of like the pull to leave the stone with Oscar when he was unconscious, or keep it on him as he tried to get out of their barred room. Voting to leave it for safekeeping with Oscar was like giving up on beating Scratch out of the deal. Yeah. Cass says the spoon drawer is so empty for poor Arthur. Yeah. I think he's been out of utensils for a long time now. Autumn says, I think ultimately I am glad we chose to hide, even if I flipped. I'm not sure if we would have gotten the Arthur breakdown or not, and I think we really needed it. I wonder how much of this chapter would have differed had we chosen to readjust the shoulder, because we did also do that. Maybe it would have just been in a different order. Yeah, I have a feeling this breakdown would have come with either option, kind of similar to the votes that we had with John choosing to be his own person. I think a lot of the choices were going to add up to the same breakdown. However, I do think there were going to be elements that might have sounded different or been different or timed differently. Bean Fiend says, what if the Dark Young just wants to be friends? Okay, look, we have a problem. Patrons try to be friends with everything constantly. No, the Dark Young doesn't want to just be friends. I thought that the Dark Young was like, because there are so many alternate names for things in lore, I thought that when you say black goat, I think of a black goat, like a genuine black goat with horns and like the cute little face and everything. And so, like, yes, I know that goats' eyes look funny, but whenever they're like, oh, the black goat of the woods or whatever, I'm like, oh, it's just a demon looking black goat, right? Like maybe a black goat with some extra eyes or like too many legs or something. But no, apparently that's not at all what Shub looks like, nor any of Shub's Dark Young. However, I'd like to imagine that, okay, Shub is the black goat, which is this adult looking black goat with maybe some extra eyes, horns, legs, things like that. Maybe like can grow random tentacles, right? But the Dark Young have to be black baby goats with the same eyes and tentacles and limbs. And I think that would be extra fun because then you just have Arthur fighting a really, really giant black baby goat. And that I could make friends with. Okay. Graham wants me to correct the record and say that the black goat is her herald. It's not actually Shub. But look, if I couldn't tell that from the text that I listened to a very long time ago, then clearly other people have the same misconception as I do. So what I'm saying is, I think it would be fun and super cool if everything looked like a black goat or a black baby goat, and it would be very fun. So, to talk about the actual vote, which is what we're actually all here to talk about, this vote is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the vote with the most options in Malevolent history, which is very fun. Usually, Malevolent polls are between two specific choices, but this one has quite a few. It is between maw, eyes, legs, face, underbelly, and teeth. Right now, it's at 349 votes total, with the lead being maw at 91%, followed by underbelly at 4%, then eyes at 3%, and everything else has a 1%. Now, I feel like it's an important update for everybody in history to know about, that this is the vote where somebody went and figured out how to actually pull real poll stats and numbers from the vote counter. Like, so instead of seeing just the percentages, which we know Patreon rounds up. So, for example, if only one person out of 350 people vote for legs, Patreon isn't going to show you the fraction of a percent. They're going to show you 1%. So it's not ever accurate to how many people have voted. Rather, it's accurate to the highest full percentage. So while we can estimate how many people have voted for which particular choice, we'll never have a real count because generally it's just never going to be accurate, right? But somebody went and found a code through GitHub where if you click on it while viewing a poll, it will pull out the exact percentage. So it turns out that maw has 318 votes, eyes has 12 votes. Legs has 2 votes, face has 3 votes, underbelly has 13 votes, and teeth has 2 votes. I think that is really cool. This is the first time we've had this tool at our disposal for votes, and I think that's going to come in handy in the future. I love that raw data. Whew, so good. So, the reason why everybody is so convinced that it's maw is because this is the first time that we've had an actually correct or incorrect objective vote. Now, you could argue that there have been objective votes in the past where there is a right and wrong answer, but this one is so right and wrong that you can actually go back and point to the answer found in part 2, which is when John and Arthur are reading up in a book and they come upon the fact that the maw of this dark young is the weak spot. Well, Arthur assumes it's the weak spot. The exact text doesn't make it clear that it is like, that's the point to aim for. But like, to me, it's kind of like a boss fight. If there's a part on the boss that's glowing and bright red, that's probably where you should aim. So makes it pretty obvious that this is where we should aim for. Also, not to mention, like, BJ did say at the end of the chapter, do you remember? So that is very clearly telling us to go find the answer from a very, like, old vote. Or an old episode, rather. So, a lot of people are very interested in what people who are really well versed on the lore of Malevolent or the very early episodes of Malevolent are saying about this. I think people went into the chat and immediately went, okay, guys, who knows the most about this? Who's been here the longest? Who remembers all this stuff? Because there are some people who remember every detail and there are some people who don't. And I'm definitely one of the people who don't. So I just take what the lore masters, quote unquote, say and treat it as gospel for a vote like this, where I go, okay, I buy it. It also helps that people were able to screenshot the transcripts and go back and listen to the episode to get that proof. So we're all solidly in the maw corner. And that makes it kind of difficult to talk about the vote this week because there's not much to say other than the fact that we have an answer. I think it's interesting that we are given such a physical, straightforward action to have Arthur take. I think it's a cool callback that makes it feel worth it to have listened to the entire back catalog. Mizra says, also Harlan loves cool tropes, so waiting to shoot the creature when it has its mouth open is very in line for what he'd want to write for the outcome. Yes, I agree. I agree. Hydrus says, I need them to stand right under it and fire up. Yes, that would be so cool. Autumn says, this dark young thing is giving me the same feeling I got when I'd watched the fourth Doctor's Pyramids of Mars, so I understood the new season's reference and I felt like such a nerd. It was amazing. Yeah, I think it's really fun when you can point at an early episode and go, oh, like, I get that. I know that reference. I think it feels very like, I'm in on it too. I'm part of the team. Hydra says, question though, do we think this is the only one down here? Yeah, that's a really good question, Hydrus. I know that during our lore segment, I had Graham and Fish on to talk a little bit about the Dark Young and what their patterns of behavior are and things like that, and what we know about them. Fish said that they are not likely to travel in herds or packs, but that doesn't mean that they're not down here. I mean, we don't know how they got down here in the first place. Is this just where they naturally live and Everard happened to be there? Build a castle on top of I'm kind of, I mean, to be totally candid with you, I'm a little bit lost orientation wise. I feel like if there is going to be more than one, I mean, I think story wise that could be cool. I think it would also be really impactful if there was only one, at least that we know of. Autumn says, I mean, Everard said don't trust the trees, plural, might suggest there are multiple. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so I'm gonna go into the voice messages that we have for this week. So first we're gonna hear from Scotty.
Oh, hi there. This is Scotty. I was just checking out the Patreon voting for this vote here. Very one-sided vote based on the history of Malevolent. But as I was scrolling through the comments, I noticed that Adam Frey actually has left a comment on the poll. The Adam Frey, one of the oldest patrons. And his comment is, sorry guys, I'm voting blind. And I think that's hilarious, but also I think it's really interesting and maybe a little poetic to aim for the eyes. So I'm not advocating for a flip or anything like that because I think it's pretty clear that Ma is the quote unquote right answer, but I'm voting eyes.
That was so cool though, with regards to Adam Frey, I think it was. For those who don't know, in Invictus history, Harlan used to name some of the NPCs in Malevolent off of some patrons, and Adam Frey is, I believe, the same Adam who is Adam Fry in Malevolent way back when the king is impersonating a person. Yes, during Arthur's coma. Anyway, insightful message. I really appreciate it. I especially like what you said about how poetic that is, like an original patron voting blind. Interesting that we still have people from so long ago and their vote means just as much as it did back then, but it has less of a weight because if they're not actively in chat talking, or if they're not in the Patreon comments and people don't know their credibility or like who they are, because I didn't know who that was. That person posted to Patreon comments, but there's nothing to tell me what kind of a legacy voter that is. I could be encountering legacy voters all the time and Patreon comments would have no idea. Mizra says if Queen was around in the early votes days, she'd be chewing at the bars of her enclosure trying to find people to debate for the polls. Yeah, no, I think it would be completely one-sided because I just yell people down and it would not be any fun. I think I would feel bad trying to talk too much about the poll and nobody engaging me, or like trying aggressively to change people's minds and then winning and then going, oh, I didn't think this through. Now everybody agrees and it's all my fault. You know what I mean? So I think it would be a very different vibe. Yeah, so the last couple of weeks I posted, I think last week it was, I posted a check-in where I said everybody who is interested in, like everybody who reads the poll chat and potentially has their mind changed by anything they read in the Discord, react to this message with a little green check mark. And only about 50, 60 people have reacted to that so far. So When you think about how there's 350 people voting and only about 50 of them read the Discord, it's a very small percentage of people. Right now, listening to this live recording, there's only 15 people. A very small percentage of folks. Let's keep listening to a couple more of these lovely voice submissions. We're going to do Mizra's next. It was very, very nice to listen to on my own, and I'm very excited to share it with everybody.
Hi, this is Mizra. My pronouns are she, they, and like for many, this chapter is now easily a top favorite of mine. This week in particular, it has just really meant a great deal to me. When I first listened to the chapter on release, I was literally standing in the rubble of my bedroom due to the ceiling falling in a few days ago, and have been feeling really overwhelmed with dealing with insurance and my property managers, finding a new place to live, and moving on short notice. So having that message continue of not giving up and to keep moving forward even when things look bleak, I just really appreciate how Harlan adds such hope and encouragement to the story despite the horrors. Hearing John's encouragement to Arthur through that poem was just such a bright spot in a dark week for me. If Arthur can persist despite everything he's facing, then so can I. This too shall pass.
Thank you so much, Mizra. I'm so sorry you're going through all that. It sounds really tough. Mizra, if anybody knows, has been with Autopsy for a while now as the primary editor for the show, and she's done so much. Without her, I don't know if the show would even still be up, and it certainly would not be as good as it is right now. So thank you so much, Mizra. But I actually want to say that before we went live tonight, I was having a really hard time today. I was really considering not doing Autopsy anymore. I have been really struggling with how to keep the show going and what to do with it and what direction I should take it in. And in the moment, it was really tough to figure out what I wanted. And so it was just easier to put it down. But I still knew that I wanted to do the live show tonight because I didn't want to let anybody down. And so I had to start prepping, and I went to the voice submissions because I remembered that Mizra mentioned she'd left a voice note because she was actually going to guest host tonight, but she ended up not being able to. So she was like, well, but I left a voice message. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be on tonight, I want to air her message at least, and I need to listen to it beforehand. So I clicked on it, and hearing that Mizra was able to be inspired by Malevolent to find hope when things were really hard reminded me that, like, that is the whole point of this chapter. That is, when things get really, really, really difficult, you have to push on and you have to keep going. Now, of course, if this ever becomes a nightmare and I don't want to do it, and if I ever find myself doing this for the wrong reasons, of course I'm willing to put Autopsy down and leave the way that I want to leave. But I think it was really necessary and inspiring and lovely to hear Mizra mention how much this chapter helped her. And it reminded me too that just because things aren't going exactly the way that I imagined they would, it's not a reason to give up. So thank you. I really appreciate that submission, Mizra. Yeah, Malevolent community is great. No, Peppers absolutely will be back on. Peppers is a very good friend of mine. Peppers is a wonderful co-host and has been a co-host and will continue to come on to host segments. But this was always my show, and I did a lot more prep, and I'm the one who organized it, and I'm the one who put all of the work into building it. And Peppers would just come on and banter with me because it was fun. So not that Peppers doesn't care about Autopsy, but Peppers has never had, I don't know how to say it, but the behind the scenes involvement that I have. And so Peppers is absolutely coming back. We're still talking about segments that she wants to do, but it's just a different format now. I've decided that there needs to be more that is recorded privately, and I can have more control over what comes out. And with my schedule the way it is, it's just easier to do it this way. But I still want to preserve that live aspect because I know everybody has a lot of fun with it. And I think I get a lot out of it when I'm able to talk to all of you folks. I love you guys. And we have one last message that I'm really excited to share.
Hi, Autopsy. Roses of Envy here, and this chapter had me running laps, as I'm sure many of us were, but what I'd like to mention, and I'm sorry in advance for sidetracking us, because I know this will, is the soundtracks we heard. So when Arthur gives up, we hear How Far We've Come, that soundtrack, and what I found interesting is that it's actually performed up the octave from the original. So I transcribed it by ear, and when writing it out, a lot of the time, it starts below the staff. There's a couple notes higher in the staff, but you can go look at it if you're real curious. But this higher octave partial performance of phrases gives us a sense of instability and unsureness, which I attribute a lot to Arthur, because we're missing something. And what we're missing is the low pedal tones. We're missing the cello melody. And that's John when you listen to the entire soundtrack. So I found that absolutely fascinating. And then we also have Noel's theme, which shows up as Arthur opens the letter around 6:21, and we find out what's written or what's not written in it. This theme pulls us back to New York and pulls us back to where these things appeared. So Noel's theme, I find it interesting again that not the entire theme is played, and there is reason for that. It's a different theme comes in, but I would love to go on. I don't want to go over the time limit. The soundscaping in this chapter in general was absolutely amazing, and I'm sure me as well as many other people haven't been able to stop thinking about it.
I need to put a caveat in the submissions folder that says if you're going to go over the time limit, it's okay only if it's about Noel. You're allowed to go over the time limit if it's about Noel. I will always make an exception for that. Thank you, Roses of Envy. Really appreciate it. Very excited to hear more about music in the future from you. But I did notice the variety of music that we got in this chapter, and I think it was a lot of fun. Very meaningful, very impactful. I don't know anything about music, but I want to hear Roses of Envy talk about that forever and ever, not just because of that amazing, beautiful voice, but also because I think it's fascinating. Yeah, How Far We've Come playing When Arthur Gave Up fucking got me, Frog Crow says. I think it got all of us. But yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys interacting and having thoughtful and insightful things to add to the discussion. And even though there wasn't a lot to talk about this chapter, I had a great time tonight. And I hope you guys continue to enjoy whatever I come up with. Malevolent is a story rich in connections and deeper ties to other sources like Lovecraftian mythos and other Invictus actual play games found on the YouTube channel. To get more insight about relevant lore for this vote, let's chat with some extra knowledgeable lore keepers.
Hello, my name is Graham, and my pronouns are he, him.
And my name is Fish, and my pronouns are he, him, and we are going to talk about some of the lore.
Hi, guys. I'm having a very normal time of it. We got a Dark Young! We got a Dark Young! I'm so happy.
Oh my god.
Have been
You
losing.
went so high, your mic peaked out. I love that, Graham. That energy is great.
I'm so normal.
It is. Absolutely.
That was great. We should keep that.
I'm so normal.
We should keep that.
As you can tell, I'm having a really normal, sane time for things. I definitely did not, make an audible noise when John said it was a Dark Young. I definitely didn't proceed to lose my mind in the Patreon channels.
Yeah.
That definitely didn't happen, and if anyone tells you it happened, they're a liar. They're a little lying liar who needs to quit lying, because I am the normalest guy ever. And I am famously normal about Shub Niggurath and Dark Young.
And literally anything relating to the Call of Cthulhu mythos campaigns.
Yes. I'm so normal, guys. I'm so normal.
Yeah. I was very taken aback. I mean, I guess I wasn't really taken aback because I had already kind of been thinking that, well, I mean, if it's Goatswood Trees, then I guess a Dark Young is probably around here somewhere. And all of the foreshadowing we have with Dark Young being in England and, all that kind of stuff. I didn't really I wasn't super surprised, but it was still kind of a bit of a surprise, just from how I've been thinking about what it means for Shub to be erased. But I guess she's still got some of her kids running around, on timelines where she's not around anymore.
John says if Shub was erased from this timeline, these must have remained motherless without a god. It now serves Everard in this castle. Which is a very big assumption to assume that it serves Everard.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's kind of being a pretty assumption based there.
Because it's equally possible that this Dark Young is just hungry, and these guys are convenient food.
Yeah, I mean the dark young creatures, they are intelligent, but that intelligence is, I mean, I guess it's variable. It depends on however Harlan wants to spin it.
Well, John does he does seem to describe it with a level of intelligence, saying that it fears no mortal man, and that he very much emphasizes that it's not afraid of them.
I think it's a pretty good assumption to assume it's not just like some mindless beast, and maybe Everard does have some sort of agreement with it or something like that. Though I'm curious about how it's supposed to feed, if this is something he does so frequently that
Yeah,
it's satisfied remaining down here and hasn't tried to move somewhere else.
because I don't believe for a second that it's trapped down here.
No, I mean, it seems like if it wanted to leave, it definitely could.
Because it does very much emphasize, like John says, it fears no mortal man, and like Everard is definitely, well, as far as we know, Everard is a mortal man. I guess he could technically not be.
I did find it very funny how, I mean, not super funny, but I mean, I found it endearing how long that the Dark Young kind of waited before acting, because if you know about them from the Cthulhu mythos, the Dark Young's primary mode of hunting is that they basically stand really, really still and pretend to be trees, and it's only when there is somebody like directly right up near them that they actually spring. So the whole time that John and Arthur are having this really nice kind of heartfelt conversation, it's hard not to imagine the Dark Young just standing there being like, "I'm doing such a good job at hiding. I'm gonna get these motherfuckers." I mean, it's literally just standing there listening to them the whole time, which is very fun.
It's like that mom I threw up meme. That's how I imagine it standing.
Yeah, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Except mom is
I
like redacted. The
Oh
word
my
is
gosh,
redacted.
yes, yes. The thing that immediately made me start like foaming at the mouth, going rabid, is that we have to figure out where to aim on the Dark Young. And the thing I knew, which is I'm very proud of this, is that even before
Yes.
checking the transcript, I knew what the weak point was. I remembered because I have read the transcript of that episode so many
So
times.
did
It's
I.
the maw.
So did
We
I.
gotta aim for the maw.
You guys both knew the answer before you looked at the transcripts because you're fucking nerds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're both autistic.
It's true.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both got that tism.
Yeah. It's just a superpower.
It is interesting because I think it's actually in part two that we hear that, at least in that book that Armitage has, that the Dark Young just kind of sprout off of Shubby
Yeah.
like growths and just kind of fall to the ground and become their own thing. So it's interesting to
Oh,
think
yeah.
about, like, if Shubby is gone, do the Dark Young just not know why they exist?
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about it. Like they were produced and then their progenitor was erased, even perhaps from their own memory. So they are kind of existing, not really understanding anything beyond what appears to be like the basics of
Yeah.
at least like preying on things, which wasn't too different from what they are traditionally known to do.
And I can't help but wonder if there might be more than one Dark Young down here. I don't know. This seems like a very climactic moment, so I could very easily see it being one and done,
Mm.
but it would be so funny if Arthur shoots this Dark Young and he's like, "Great job, guys," like patting himself on the back, and then another one shows up.
Well, I was about to say, doesn't that mean that these are like critically endangered?
Oh my god, yeah.
Because
I will say that it is notable among the dark young that they do not really move in herds. They are typically pretty solitary among their kind. They don't really, although there are some occasions of them, like, I guess, coming together sometimes. At least that's what it says in a couple books.
I think it's most likely that it's just the one Dark Young. I can't get over how funny it would be if
Mhm.
there's like conveniently seven of them, one more than the amount of bullets we have.
Yeah, it would be pretty funny. Yeah. Do you think that the bullet is going to be enough to kill this Dark Young? What's interesting is in episode two, we don't actually know that is a weak point. The only thing that it's just marked on the diagram that they find of the drawing of the Dark Young, and John is like, maybe, or no, Arthur is like, maybe that's its weak point, but it's not labeled as that.
I don't think Harlan. I mean, okay, I don't know Harlan personally, but it would be a weird moment, I feel like, narratively, for him to be like, haha, joke's on you. That's not the weak point.
Oh no, I know. I fully and believe it is going to be the weak point, but I'm wondering if this is going to be if it's so much of a weak point that it can actually be like killed, or if it's some sort of deal where it'll end up being very injured and stagger away and leave them alone.
Yeah, I could see it going either way. I could even see it that we have to take multiple shots at the maw.
Oh yeah, I think that Arthur's plan is going to just be to unload it, unload his full thing. I don't think that the gun is going to be a usable weapon after this encounter.
I have a feeling it's going to start with Arthur trying to be conservative about his bullet usage and then having to, for some reason, unload the entire thing. Because I agree with you. I think that having the gun itself in the story right now has been a very much like when we're talking about the chapters and the votes, everybody keeps bringing up that we have a gun and they remember how many bullets they have, which to me as a GM would be a note to get that out of our hands because that's too easy of a fix.
Yeah, it makes it, when it comes to interpersonal problems with other humans, it makes it way too easy to just get out of, like, situations like that, because it's like, these are all medieval guys, and Arthur has a fucking gun.
He does.
It makes him kind of overpowered in that way.
I mean, I was even saying during last chapter when Arthur was being stalked by Barnabas, I remember yelling. I was like, "Arthur, you have a fucking gun" or something like that. There's a lot of things I feel like that are gonna happen in very quick succession in the next chapter, and I'm really curious.
Traditionally, in the history of Malevolent, guns never last very long. They always have to get lost in some manner.
Yeah. I don't want to lose it. I'm fine with not having bullets in it anymore, but I don't want to lose it because that gun is very special and important to me personally.
Because it came from Charlie.
Because it came from Noel. I want to believe that Arthur is carrying our knight in shining armor with him in that gun and that it's going to stay with us forever and ever like yeah, like it should.
Like the lighter? Unlike him.
I mean,
So
you could
sad.
say that Noel is actually the one who is doing the killing, and we should be thanking him for say
You
rescuing
could
us.
say that. Technically, you can say anything you want.
I might not
There's nothing
agree.
I can do to stop you. The veracity of what you're saying doesn't matter. We can just sit here and say a lot of things that aren't real,
Symbolically,
but
Noel is there. I'm choosing to believe.
Well,
My last kind of question had been specifically about what it means. Like, why is it a big deal that it's Dark Young? Is that just because we know that it's a really fucked up monster, or does that mean something overall
well,
more?
the reason it means so much to me is because, of course, Chubby is such a big. She's the antagonist, the overarching villain of Call of Cthulhu Game 1, and then her death has such big impacts. And also, so seeing a Dark Young is cool for that reason, also because she
yeah.
was so. The after effects of her were so important in the like beginning of season 1 of Malevolent. It feels like something coming full circle because
Yeah.
we're finally getting this, because Dark Young are first mentioned in the
Yeah.
second episode of Malevolent, so it's a really cool full circle moment to have this be relevant again.
Which is awesome.
And I don't know how to put it into words. It just feels really cool. It has nothing really to do about it having like super strong theory lore implications or anything, or that the Dark Young is even particular. Well, I know you do.
I
But for
have a
me,
lot of thoughts.
it's really exciting and really cool
Yeah,
to see something from so early on come back. It'd be kind of the same feelings I would have if, say, the three soldiers showed up. Because, fun fact, the three soldiers are first mentioned in the very first episode of
that's
Malevolent.
true.
Actually, I believe in the third chapter, third or fourth. I just know where the choices are.
I've never done a chapter by chapter listen to a level of Malevolent.
The first choice is whether or not to kill Eddie. And then I think the second choice is how to introduce yourself to Armitage. So I think it does have to be not Armitage, Ackerman. Look at me, getting the A names mixed up. I think it has to be the third chapter of Malevolent
Yeah.
is when De Tribus Militibus, or the Three Soldiers, is first brought up. So
I also think that somebody familiar with the Cthulhu mythos, the Dark Young is kind of like a very like emblematic monster of the Cthulhu mythos. I think it's like a what would like a D&D equivalent be? I guess maybe like a Tarask in D&D. So it's a big deal when this shows up. At least it was to me, because it's something that's really fucking intense. And I mean, I was saying like, dude, if there is a Dark Young down here, Arthur's probably fucked. I think it's very interesting too what that means for like the greater lore.
it's very interesting from the standpoint of like it seems that now that we know both the Black Goat and the Dark Young can exist without Shub, it seems like her erasure does not extend to entities connected to her, only like the outright memories of her. I don't know. It could be that maybe Kane was over exaggerating because, he's not the most reliable of narrators, but it is strange that
But at the same time, I don't know what he would gain from lying about this.
not necessarily lying. I was thinking more like just being a little over dramatic, but I really don't know.
Yeah, because I certainly don't believe that Shub herself is going to become a real, actual actor.
Oh no. I am 100% certain that she is gone. I don't think we will ever actually really. I don't think Shub, like you said, is going to be an actor in the plot or have any like. She's not going to be doing anything that affects it because she's dead.
Hmm.
But her death is definitely it's always been from the very start a very intertwined.
It's kind of the reason why John exists.
It is the reason why John exists, and it's the reason why Malevolent exists, even from a
Yeah,
meta standpoint, because
yeah, literally.
the place where Call of Cthulhu 1 ended off with Shub's death gave Harlan a jumping spot off of for Malevolent. Her death, everything does kind of come back to her death
Yeah.
as this like not focal point, but like starting point where everything else has, because even Kane's own existence,
Hmm.
he only is Kane because he witnessed Shub's death.
Yeah. So she's a huge background player, and I also think that's part of why some people were so excited to see, like, finally something that is very solidly from her.
Forget about Parker Yang. The real one haunting the narrative is Shub.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
You're gonna have people coming after you for that one.
I feel the need to clarify that I love Parker with all of my heart.
Graham says with a gun pointed at his head.
I don't think he's in the waylay.
I don't think he's in the waylay either. I'm so sorry to everybody who does, but I don't think he's there. I have a whole thing about the waylay. I won't get into it yet.
I don't think we're ever going to see Parker on screen, as it were.
Now, my question is, have you ever seen Shub and Parker Yang together in the same room?
They were the same person
That's what I
all
want
along.
Shub is Parker, Parker is Shub. I love it. I'm behind it.
I think that's all we have to talk about for this chapter.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, of course.
You're welcome.
I appreciate hanging out with you, and you guys are wonderful lore masters. I really appreciate your insight. I'm sure we'll hear from you a lot going forward. I think we're getting into more and more lore heavy stuff.
Yes.
Thank you, of course, to Harlan Guthrie, the sole creator of Malevolent. You can find everything official at linktree/Harlan Guthrie. Without his labor of love for a story he wants to tell, we wouldn't be here. And speaking of here, if you want to be part of the live vote chat I record each week, join the Invictus Patreon and connect your Discord account. We have our own private patrons-only autopsy channel. If you want to chat with me and maybe even some other folks you hear from on the show, you can also find a public autopsy channel from the Invictus Discord so you can hang out even if you're not a patron. While Malevolent Autopsy is my pride and joy, it wouldn't be ever improving without some key players. Thank you to Mizra, Nikki, and Vol Control for their work editing and assisting with production. They do so much for the show, and they do it all as volunteers, and I couldn't be more grateful. To submit a voice recording, have your message read aloud on the show, or find us on other platforms, visit linktree/Malevolent Autopsy. Let's hear from one more Malevolent fan before we finish this week.
Hi, this is Mizra, pronoun she, they, and Malevolent has grown to mean so much to me over the last year and a half since I discovered it. From the show itself with its themes of hope and perseverance that have motivated me, even when dealing with things like my ceiling falling in, especially how Arthur and John encourage one another and trust in each other to keep moving forward and trying to be better. I especially love their friendship. As someone who is ace, it's so refreshing having a story with a platonic relationship at the heart of the story without it being less important or strong because it's not romantic. I also have met so many creative, talented, funny, and just wonderful people through this fandom, and I love being a part of this community.
I'm your host, Queen, and I'll see you next week. The horrors persist, but so do we.